Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to talk about all of the books that I hope to read in January of 2026. And there are some really fun ones that I have on my list. And if you have watched previous videos, I'm going to do a slight change up this year. So normally at the end of my videos, I pull a random letter and I pick books off of my Kindle backlist that start with that letter. And this year instead, I have these reader roulette TBR cards that I'm gonna pull 4 of these every video and pick random books that I want to read based on the cards that I pull, and they'll tell me what to read. So we're gonna try this out and see how it goes, but I'll do that at the end of this video. So first, I typically start with books I didn't get to in the previous month. And I'm happy to report that at the end of 2025, I completed all of the books on my list. And so I do not have any books hanging over into the new year. It is a completely clean slate. And of course, I have packed it to the brim with all kinds of things that I'm excited to read. So the first thing on my list is a book called Practical Ayurveda. And this is a book by DK Publishing. I have encountered Ayurveda and Ayurvedic techniques in a lot of my yoga therapy study, and it's something that I just don't know very much about. So I decided to purchase a couple of books on this topic. This is one of them that I own the physical copy of, and I'm gonna work my way through it in January. I also decided to pick up a book called Be the Unicorn by William Vanderbloemen. And this is a book that I encountered because unknowingly I read this author's other book, which is about kind of like using data about yourself to find the right career path. And as you may know, I love career books. And this book has the subtitle of 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest. And he mentions this book in this other book, and I happen to have a copy of it because I picked it up a while ago, and I wanted to pick this one up too. I enjoyed the book about kind of like data-driven career choices, and I thought this one would be interesting as well. I also decided to pick up another physical copy of a book that I own called This Book is a Retreat, 101 Soul Nourishing Questions to Reconnect with Yourself by Marian Richmond. And this is a book that when I saw it, I just looked really lovely. And so I wanted a hard copy. It has a ton of reflective questions in it. This is the time of year that I love to do extra journaling and reflection. So I'm excited to dive into that as well. I also have on my list the 12-Week Year for Writers. This is by Brian Moran, and yes, it has multiple people, Trevor Thrall, Michael Lennington, multiple authors on this one. And these authors also wrote just a kind of more general book called The 12-Week Year, which I read years ago and really enjoyed. And it's basically about quarterly planning. And then they have this other one specifically about writing, and I've got some writing on my list of things to do this year, probably starting another book project. And so I have a kind of a stack of books on writing and publishing that I want to be working my way through throughout the year. So I thought I would start with this one, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas about writing habits that I can instill throughout the year. Continuing the career type books, I also have on my list The Good Enough Job by Simone Stolzoff. And this is a book that is talking about basically like allowing yourself to have balance with your job and your life. And who can't use that? It's probably advice that we could all probably dig into a little bit more. And it's something I've heard good things about. So I thought I would pick that one up as well. And okay, then I've got a couple of fiction reads. The first one is Best Offer Wins by Marissa Cascino. And this is one I've seen everywhere and everybody is raving about it. It's basically about a woman who goes a little bit crazy about like stalking someone that she wants to buy their house before it goes on the market. And apparently you're kind of like rooting for her, and she's like a bit of a villain who has like no boundaries. And so I thought I would pick this up just because I've seen it everywhere and it looks like it's really fun. I also have on my list Gone to Dust. This is the first book in the Nils Shapiro mystery series by Matt Goldman. I have never read this author before, I don't think. And what I thought was interesting is this premise. There's a woman who is found dead, and she's covered with like a bunch of bags of vacuum cleaner dust, which like messes with all the DNA and like all of the clues. And I was like, that's a really interesting premise for a crime. And so I thought I would pick that one up as well. I also have on my list a recent release. I think this came out in November of last year. It's called The Botanist's Assistant by Peggy Townsend. And I love a good academic mystery. And this is an academic mystery where you have a murder on a college campus, and this woman is kind of like, she's described, the main character as like a little bit odd. Like, she's very tall and she lives out in a cabin in the woods, and she gets kind of like embroiled in this situation with this crime. And so it just sounded really interesting. So I'm going to pick that one up as well. I also continue my reading around neurodivergence with a recent book that came out. This one came out in September of 25. It's called Invisible ADHD. And this is by Sheena Pearson. Sheena Pearson is a coach. She runs a company that supports particularly, I think, women with ADHD through coaching. And I'm also a certified coach who has been trained to work with people who have ADHD. And so I was just like intrigued by what she might have to say. And so I have this on audio and also a physical copy out from my library. So looking forward to digging into that. I also was able to procure an advanced reader's copy of Powered by Projects by Antonio Nieto Rodriguez. And this is a Harvard Business Review press publication that I got through NetGalley. And I am like fascinated by projects and project management. This is something I do in my day job and something I like to read about. And I was like really excited to get an advanced reader's copy of this. So it does come out in January, and I'm looking forward to digging into that as well. I also finally got through my library hold list Fawning by Ingrid Clayton. And this is a book that is about, like, you have fight or flight or freeze, and you also have fawn. And so she's talking about like the need to please and people who kind of deal with conflict by fawning, which I find fascinating. And I probably do this, like I'm probably somebody who fawns. And so I want to read more about this. I think it's a newer concept that people have been talking about, and I'm excited to add that to my list. I also have on my list out from my local library, Hearts in Circulation. This is the second book in the Checking Out Love series by Sarah Monson. And the first book in this series, I'm just reminding myself the title. Oh yeah, it was An Overdue Match. This is the one that I recently talked about that had like a tattoo artist and a librarian. And this book is about another librarian who runs a bookmobile that I think like breaks down, and then she has like a romance with like a local mechanic. I'm all for librarian love stories, so I'm happy to pick this one up and see what I think. Then I have Awake by Jen Hatmaker. This is also one coming in from my hold list of my library. And this is a memoir about a woman who finds out like 26 years, I think, into her marriage, that her partner is having an extramarital affair. And this ends their relationship, I think, after 26 years. And so she's writing this memoir about this situation. This is someone who I think is relatively well known. Like, she has a following. I don't know who this person is. Like, I've not encountered her. Like, this was the first I'd heard of her, but I've heard people talking about this book a lot. I've heard it's really good. And so I wanted to pick this one up as well. A couple months back, I read my first book by Suzanne Woods Fisher, and I decided that I really enjoyed it. So I'm picking up another of her books called The Letters. This is the Inn at Eagle Hill series, book number 1. And Suzanne Woods Fisher is known for writing Amish romance. And she's like opened this door for me of all of these different authors who write Amish romance. Last month, I read a different author with an Amish romance that was just delightful. And so I'm falling down the rabbit hole of Amish romance authors. And I think it's just like the stories are so charming, and, you know, they're relatively light in terms of what's going on. There's very little conflict. You know, everything's going to work out in the end. And I end up reading these books like a chapter or two before I go to bed at night. Like, it's just like a nice, calming, you know, story to read. So I have that on my list as well. Less calming is The Birdwatcher by Jacqueline Mitchard. And this is a book about a graduate student who's also an escort, and she's accused of a murder, but she says she didn't do it. And then there's a journalist who's like digging into the situation and trying to like help prove like her innocence. And this is the author, if you are unfamiliar with her work, who also wrote The Deep End of the Ocean, which was made into a film. And I read this book, I don't know when I read this book. I'd have to look and see. Years ago, I picked up this book by her, and I don't think I've read anything else by her, but I've wanted to. And so this is her most recent. So I decided to pick that one up. I also have on my list Haven't Killed in Years by Amy Green. This is about the adult daughter of a serial killer who gets like pulled into a crime, and she's trying to kind of solve this crime. I think she gets kind of connected with like amateur cold case, detectives and things like that in this book, if I'm remembering the details. And it just looked interesting. It's recent. I was able to pick it up through one of my subscriptions, so I thought I would try that out this month. Then I have on my list Tony at Random. This is by Dana Williams, and somebody I know was reading this book. And I have been a fan of Toni Morrison for many, 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 many years. I started reading her in college, and I actually have taught her books, when I used to teach literature classes. And Tony at Random is about her time at Random House because she was an editor there. And a lot of people don't know that. They just think she was this like amazing writer, and she wrote essays and critical essays as well as novels that had, amazing reviews. And she's just she died, but she was an incredibly talented artist. And she was also this like legendary editor. So I'm excited to read about that part of her life, and I think it'll be really interesting. Okay, I was also able to get an advanced reader's copy of a book called The New Perimenopause by Mary Claire Haver. And this author has another book about just called, I think, The New Menopause. And this is her most recent book about perimenopause. And it comes out in April of 2026. And I was also able to get an advanced reader's copy through NetGalley. And this is something that it's just a really interesting topic. I think for many women who are roughly around my age, which is like early 40s, to better understand this phenomenon, that happens to all women. And I don't know much about it, if I'm being honest. And so I saw this was available, and I was absolutely excited to pick it up. So looking forward to reading that. I also have on my list a book called The Accomplice by Lisa Lutz. This is I think a thriller about a man and a woman who are inseparable, they're very close friends, and there's a lot of mystery around their relationship. And then there's a murder as part of the plot line, and I think the man of the two gets kind of embroiled in this situation, and it raises all these questions about their relationship. I don't know much more than that, but it just sounded really intriguing, so I thought I would pick that up and see. I also have on my list, I could not help myself, Game Changer by Rachel Reed. Now, if you have been following anybody that I've been following on social media, you have heard about the new TV series, Heated Rivalry, which is about gay hockey players and their romance. And this is based on this series, which is the Game Changer series by Rachel Reed. The second book in the series is Heated Rivalry. The first book is Game Changer. And of course, I have to read the books in order. So this is a book about a male hockey player and a man who works at a juice bar and makes him smoothies, and apparently they have a romance. And I've heard great things about this series. I'm super excited to dive in. And of course, we'll watch the adaptation once I get through the series and have a sense of what this is. Okay, next up, I have a book on my list called The Living and the Dead. This is by Christopher Carlson. It is translated because this is a Swedish mystery novel. Now, when I was in graduate school, so this would have been between 12 and 15, no, more than that, between 15 and 18 years ago, something like that, 15 years ago, I got super into Nordic noir, Nordic mysteries. I read a ton of different authors in this space. It was my thing that I was doing in grad school to balance out all the other reading that I had to do. And it's been a while since I have gone back to reading some of these Nordic mysteries. And so I saw this one and I was oh, this sounds perfect for dark, cold January to pick up this mystery. So this is about I think it's about two boys who leave a house party, and then somebody is killed, and the boys are suspected of murder, and it kind of goes on from there. But I'm wondering if this will open a door for me to swing all the way back to looking at all of these Nordic mysteries that I haven't read for years, because I just really enjoy them. All right, also on my list is Gus by Kim Holden. This is the second book in the Brightside series. And I read Brightside, which is the first book in this series, a couple months back. And this is about a side character in that series who, without going into too much detail about book one, he basically lives through this tragedy, and he gets his own love story in this book. And I wanted to continue and kind of see what happened with these characters after book one. And so I'm going to pick that one up. Also on my list is Euro Dreams by Kate Stewart. And I have read one book by Kate Stewart that I really, really enjoyed. And it's a Christmas book. It's like a holiday book. It was called, I want to say it's like The Plight Before Christmas. It is. It's The Plight Before Christmas. It's the first book in a series called Holiday Hijinks. And then I read another book by her that I was like, I don't know, like it was just very different. Like when I read The Plight Before Christmas, it was like charming, and there was like this family, side character stuff that I really enjoyed, which is like one of my favorite things about romances is when you have these like side characters and family members who are like funny and they add all these layers. And the other book I read by her was kind of dark, and I was like, okay, like she has a range, clearly. This book I'm kind of hoping is more like The Plight Before Christmas. So I'm going to read this and see what I think, because clearly she has this range, and I'm kind of curious to see if this is as delightful as I found The Plight Before Christmas. So giving that a try. I also have on my list The Last Party. This is the first book in the DC Morgan series by Claire McIntosh. And this is a book that I had also heard really good things about. Like there's like a trilogy or like a small series. And I had heard really good things about like later books in this series. And so I wanted to pick this up and see what I thought. There's basically like a New Year's Eve party, and at midnight, one person is dead and a bunch of other people are suspects. And then this detective comes in and tries to figure out what happened. So probably pretty traditional detective story, but I'm excited to pick that up. And then the last 3 books I have on my predetermined list, which I am very excited about, is I'm going to try to read the entire Crescent City series that has been currently published, which is 3 books by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I think it was 2 Januaries ago that I decided to read the entire, she has like a very long running series, which is like not in my mind right now. What is it called? Throne of Glass is this series. It's long. It was like thousands of pages, and I picked it up in January, and it was perfect for just like getting through what is like a very long, dark, cold month. And I feel like January in my life always just goes on forever. So I like to give myself something that I can like really dig into and chew on. And that series was perfect. This is a series that I actually read House of Earth and Blood several years ago. This is the first book in the Crescent City series. And it was my first Sarah J. Maas. And I think it's not necessarily where I would recommend people start. Typically people start with her other series, which is called A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I've also read. And then they go on to Throne of Glass, and then they might come on to Crescent City. Crescent City is like very intense world building. And I read it at a time when I wasn't super into fantasy. And since then I've read a lot of fantasy novels, and I'm like much more aware of like how the world building happens in these books. And so I want to revisit this, and I have all 3 of them in hard copy form, and I have them on audio. So I think this will be perfect to dive into these books over the month of January, and I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, so now for these TBR cards. So I found these online. I will link to them in the video description if you are interested in checking out what they are. But basically every card has like a different suggestion of what you should be reading. So there's all these different things in here. And what I'm going to do basically is shuffle them. And then I'm going to pick 4, and I'm going to see what they're telling me to read. And some of these things I might have to like take a minute to figure out what is the book that I need to read based on what it's telling me. But let's pick 4 and see what comes out of this. So the first card I am choosing is to choose a book about friendship. Okay, choose a book about friendship. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my Kindle, because I still want to read my backlist on my Kindle. And I am going to go to some of like my more recently purchased books. And I'm going to start there and just kind of glance through and see if there's anything in here that is a book about friendship before I dive deeper into something else. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in my more recently purchased books. So where I'm going to go next, I have a bunch of categories on my Kindle. I categorize all my books to kind of help me find, what I want to look for. And what I'm going to do next, I think I found it. Okay, so I'm looking in my category that I call feel-good fiction because this is typically stuff that is just like, there's typically just like, sometimes it's women's literature, but it's also just stuff that's kind of like feel-good. So I think this book, and I'm gonna open up the description and see if I'm remembering this correctly. Okay, I found the book. So this is a book called Joy for Beginners by Erica Bauermeister, and it is from 2011. And it is about a woman who survived a life-threatening illness, and she celebrates by gathering with 6 close friends at an intimate outdoor dinner on a warm September evening. And it says that one of her friends proposes a pact, and they want to go do like rapids, like they want to go go rafting in the rapids. And it says if she will do the rapids, each woman will do one thing in the next year that scares her. So this is my book about female friendship. So I'm going to go ahead and add this one to my list. Okay, then we're going to shuffle these cards a little bit and we'll pull the next one. Okay, so the next card says, read a book with an animal in the title. Okay, so I'm going to go to my books and I'm going to see, let me see if I have any categories that might have an animal in the title. This is what's kind of interesting about these TBR cards is like, it doesn't like immediately come to mind of what book I should be reading based on this. And I'm seeing animals on the cover, but I'm not seeing animals in the title. Okay, so I have found nothing in personal development. The next category I'm going to try to see if I can find an animal in the title is memoir. This feels like I might be able to find something. Let's take a look. Okay, there's a book called The Puma Years. Pretty sure a puma is an animal. Is that right? Okay, so this says it's about a woman in her early 20s and directionless when she quit her job to backpack in Bolivia. Fate landed her at a wildlife sanctuary on the edge of the Amazon jungle where she was assigned to a beautiful and complex puma named Weira. So this is about this woman who is at this animal sanctuary. So that totally fits the bill. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my list. Okay, and then let's shuffle again. I have 2 more cards I'm going to pull here. The next one is choose the most popular book on your shelf. The most popular book on my shelf. All right. I don't know what this is. How would I know the most popular book on my shelf? Let me go to, again, one of the ones I've recently purchased to see if there's anything in here that is like a more popular one. Okay, what I think I'm going to do actually, I'm going to go to the romance category because I feel like there are often romance books that go on sale and I pick them up and they're considered very popular. So let me see if I can find anything. You know what I think I'm going to do? I have the second book in the Game Changer series, the Heated Rivalry book that I talked about. And this is definitely popular right now. This is what everybody's talking about. So I'm going to read Game Changer first, and then I'm going to read Heated Rivalry second. And that would absolutely fulfill this TBR card. So, okay, let me add that to my list as well. Okay, and I'm going to do one more. I'm actually tempted to do 5 cards because typically I do 5 books off my list. Maybe I'll pick a 5th one too. Okay, next card. Pick a book that everyone has read. This may also need to come from the romance category. A book that everyone has read. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull from literary fiction. I have a category called literary fiction, and I bet there's something in here that like everybody has read that I have not read. Let me see if I can find something. Typically, a book that everyone has read is like an older book. I know which one I'm going to pick up. Okay. I have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and Hamnet was a very popular book. It is about the child of Shakespeare when Shakespeare was writing Hamlet. And this is being made into a film right now, and so it's like having this resurgence in popularity. But this is one that I have seen a lot of people saying that they have read. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my list as well. Okay, I'm going to do one more card. This is just too much fun. I'm so glad I'm doing this every month. It's going to be really, really fun. Okay, next card is read a book with a 1-word title. All right, a 1-word title. Let me see if there's another category here that I can draw from. All right, I have a category called YA and Children's Lit. Let me see if there's anything in here with a one-word title. All right, so I see a couple. Let me see what some of these are even about. I'm not even sure this is YA. I've got something in here and I'm like, not sure that it's YA. Well, it takes place in a high school. Okay, so the book that I'm pulling for this is called Obsidian. This is a Lux novel by Jennifer Armentrout. Now, you have heard me talk about Jennifer Armentrout before because I have read, she has kind of these like spicy fantasy novels, but this says that there's a girl who moves to West Virginia right before her senior year, and she spots a hot neighbor, and it sounds like this is like an enemies to lovers story. Oh, and the neighbor turns out to be an alien. Okay, so the neighbor is an alien, and they have a galaxy of enemies wanting to steal their abilities, and this is the first book in a series. So, okay, it's got pretty good ratings. I'll go ahead and pick that up. So Obsidian by Jennifer Armentrout is my last book that I'm going to pick up off my backlist. And in future months, I will pick more books from this deck, and that will be how I randomly add things to my TBR pile for each month. So a lot of really good things for a very long, dark, cold month of 2026 to kick us off. And I'm really excited to get back to you at the end of this month and see what I was able to read. Until then, happy reading.